Yo. The topic of this video is going to be about being a caveman. Being a caveman in modernity. Being a caveman in modernity. That's the topic of this video, yo. I wanted to talk about now. It's pretty much, isn't it kind of weird that we have more or less the same bodies as our prehistoric ancestors? The biology, the physical like parts, the organs, the nervous system and tissue and all that. It's pretty much the same as our prehistoric ancestors, isn't it? Like from like a few thousand years ago, we have the same like physical like body parts and everything like that. We pretty much have the same physiology, the same body parts, the same everything. It's so weird if you think about it like this, man, I swear on. Everything's pretty much the same. Same physiology, same like brain chemistry, everything like that. Nervous the nervous tissue, everything like that. Our tribal instincts and everything's pretty much the same. The instincts in our head, in our brains, everything like that. It's still the same as it was a few thousand years ago, yo. Isn't that so wild that we're basically still like cavemen, but just in modernity, in the modern day and age, with all of this like sophisticated technology around us. Even though you can't really see much here, but if you can kind of see at the back there's like cars and there's like a tower or something like that. We're like pretty much, what's very interesting is our entire like society, civilization, the level of our technology, like the state of our technology has came such a far way. We've come so far from like a few thousand years ago regarding like our technology, the infrastructure of our society and civilization, etc. and stuff like that. The only funny part is that we haven't really changed regarding like our biology, our physiology. For example, like our brains, our instincts, we still, like, this is so weird to think about, but you probably still have like the primal like instincts and desires of like one of your like great grandfathers that lived in like the Stone Age. You still have his like brain chemistry. Isn't that so weird? You still have his like physiology as well, like the similar like body parts and organ structure and everything. There's not a lot has changed, you know. That's so weird. A lot hasn't changed from then to now, if you know what I mean. We are like being like the topic of this video is going to be about being a caveman in modernity. A lot hasn't changed at all regarding like our physiology, the structure of our organs, our brains, the nervous tissue in our heads, everything like that. A lot hasn't changed over the course of our history, like especially from the Stone Age to the modern day and age. We still have the same like instincts, the same primal desires, the same stuff in our brains and our bodies, and etc. There's not a lot that's changed too. We haven't, like, it's not like if you jump back a few thousand years, like it's like we're like a completely different species now. No, bro, like it's so weird once you think about this. We're pretty much, we still have all the like the caveman and like instinct, primal desires, all of that caveman stuff. It's still with us today in the modern day and age, that our ancestors had the same instincts, primal desires, like body structure, organs, all that stuff. We literally are cavemen, but just in modernity. The topic of this video is going to be about being like a caveman in modernity. It's so weird to think about this, because it does feel like we've completely changed, but in reality we haven't changed all that much if you think about it like this. That like we still have a lot of the similar like physiology, the similar biology, the similar like brain chemistry, primal instincts and desires. It's all the same as what our ancestors had, our Stone Age ancestors that were living in caves and like living in huts and like running around the Sahara Desert. there's not a lot that's changed regarding like our biology, our physiology. So that's so whimsical to me, because it's so weird, because we pretty much, a lot of us, we're just like, we're cavemen, but we have all of this like sophisticated technology now. If you could see in the distance there, the car's going. We have the same bodies of our like Stone Age ancestors, the same like neural wiring, the same instincts, the same primal desires, the same like primitiveness in our bodies and our brains and minds, but with like all of this advanced technology now. But that's so, isn't that kind of funny though? Because we're still cavemen. We still have all these like primal, like archaic, ancient like instincts and desires that are still driving us today, even like controlling a lot of our behavior. But we have all of this like modernity, modern stuff around us as well, the advanced technology and infrastructure. That's so, if you think about it, this is so weird. Like, it doesn't really make much sense if you think about it like this, that how is it like, because if you think about it, we are not like, some people think that we've come such a long way from like our more primitive Stone Age ancestors. I don't think so. I think pretty much the only thing that's really drastically been changing is our society and civilization. But regarding like our biology, our physiology, like our brain structure and like the instincts that govern us, a lot of it hasn't changed that much. And I think we still have a lot of these like archaic like desires and like instincts that are driving us today still. Henceforth why, you know, maybe perhaps this is the reason why war and stuff like that is still very much common in our day and age, in our world, because we are still being like governed by like these like very archaic, primitive, like primal instincts that our Stone Age ancestors had. And obviously we haven't changed that much from our ancestors that much. We still carry a lot of the same instincts, a lot of the same archaic instincts that governed our ancestors. They're still with us today. This is so weird to think about. Being a caveman in modernity, obviously we have a lot of advanced technology now, but a lot of us, we still carry these like very archaic, primitive instincts that our ancestors had and needed to survive. There's still these instincts, like that, a lot of this like archaic, old, like primal desires, instincts, survival mechanisms in our brain that our ancestors that lived in the Sahara Desert needed to survive and to live another day in their like very Stone Age environment. We still have all the same brain stuff from them in the modern day and age. Being a caveman in modernity is so weird once you start to think about it like this, that really we are not so far away from like our Stone Age caveman ancestors. The same primitive like instincts, desires, biology, brain structure, everything like that, it's all the same. It hasn't changed all that much. This is so interesting and weird to think about. We still like have these like ancient like instincts, these ancient old archaic like sort of like parts in our brain and our biology and our bodies. All of the old stuff from our ancestors is still with us today, obviously, because it wasn't like every time like we've been like developing in our history, like the archaic parts were being chucked out, like in our brain stuff was being like removed so we could become more like civilized. That wasn't happening. All the old archaic like parts of our brain, like the primitive like primal instincts and desires, all that stuff was still continually being passed on, and we still have those like ancient like archaic old like desires and instincts, and it's still with us today, and we're still very much like being governed by them. Being a caveman in modernity, this is so interesting to think about, because it's so like, it actually is very 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 much true though, that we are pretty much like cavemen, but we just now have all of this like advanced technology surrounding us, but we still have the caveman like aspects to our biology, like the primitive caveman brain, the caveman brain that wants to like dominate, to conquer, to fuck, reproduce, survive, take resources from enemy tribes. All those like primitive like very like competitive instincts and desires, it hasn't been removed. It's still been passed, it's all been passed down still today. We still have those same old archaic instincts and desires. That's so bizarre to think about, isn't it? Being a caveman in modernity, a lot hasn't changed, which is so interesting to think about regarding like our physical bodies and our brains and minds and etc. It's all the same as it was back then in the Stone Age, when our ancestors were running around the Sahara Desert, or they were running around some other type of environment that was like very archaic and old, like maybe they were in like fucking Siberia or something. Those old like that's so, this is why it's so funny to me, because we have all of this like advanced technology but we still have like these archaic, old, like primitive instincts and like aspects to our biology, our brains and our bodies. We still have these ancient, like old instincts that are still with us and are governing us, but with all this like, look around you, the cores and all that. But but what's so interesting is we still have these ancient, like old instincts that are kind of like becoming outdated now. These instincts to like dominate, to compete, to survive and reproduce. It's so weird to think about this. It's all the same as it was a couple thousand years ago. The instincts, these primitive, like primal instincts about like, right, you know, like survive and reproduce, compete with other tribes, take resources, to hunting and gathering as well. Like the hunter-gatherer part of our development was very crucial. It probably molded our biology in so many different ways. Our physical like anatomy is still the same as our prehistoric ancestors. It's not like we grew like extra limbs or some shit. Like, you know what I mean? We still have like these like old ass like parts to our biology, our brains and everything. Our physiology is still the same as it was a couple thousand years ago regarding like our Stone Age ancestors. That's so wild to think about, yo. That our biology hasn't changed all that much. It's still the same as it was way back when. We just have all this like new technology surrounding us, but the biology is still the same as it was a couple thousand years ago during the Stone Age, maybe perhaps a little bit further back, but the point remains. Our biology is still the same. It hasn't changed at all. That's so weird to think about, that we're pretty much like cavemen still today. We have all the same instincts, the same desires, the same like neural chemistry, brain chemistry, the instincts. All of that is still the same as it was back then, as it is today now. But we now have all this technology and like in civilization surrounding us. But there's still the archaic like brain and all that, man. It's so weird. It's still the same as it was back then. The old like instincts and all the old desires and the primal stuff in our brains and our bodies, we haven't changed all that much. Again, it's not like we grew like extra limbs, a different like lobe in our brain over the couple thousand years or something like that. Isn't that kind of funny? It's not like, you know, like over the course of 1,000 years we grew like different part, like a new lobe inside of our brains. We still have caveman brains, man. That's so weird. Caveman brains, you know what I mean by that? Our brains, we are like designed to survive in like the Sahara Desert, pretty much. If you believe in like Darwinism and the theory of evolution, we still have like caveman brains. We still have caveman brains. That's so weird to think about. Like we have like these ancient like archaic like instincts and desires and primitiveness in our brains and our bodies, physiology, biology. All of our bodies are literally still like meant for like the Stone Age. Do you know what I mean? That's why. But we have all this advanced technology now, but we still have these ancient like our bodies. Again, if you believe in the theory of evolution, we still have like these like primitive like instincts that govern us still today. Like our bodies are meant for the Stone Age, for the Sahara Desert, to survive in like a hunter-gatherer ecology. But we have like these like brains now, big brain, well, actually brains aren't big. We have all this like civilization around us now, technology, etc. But still the primitiveness in our brains hasn't changed at all. Trust me, it's so weird and insane to think about. Look at that plant, bro. Look at all that stuff. Being a caveman in modernity, we still have all this like pretty much all this advanced technology, infrastructure, society, etc. But the caveman instincts are still there. And that's so weird. We still have like these primitive like aspects to our biology, our instincts regarding our brains, our bodies, everything like that. It's all still so primitive, but we have all of this advanced technology as well now. So how would you put two and two together there? Really, it's got to be kind of, obviously, you know, certainly this especially relates to like war in our world today. There's always been like great like wars and battles fought, and you know, I think the reason for that is because we still have these like archaic bodies, these like old ancient, like our instincts are still so like deeply rooted in our like archaic ancestors and their like development in the desert or in the Stone Age environment, hunter-gatherer ecologies. We still have all that old primitiveness still like controlling us today, and I think as a result that is where like war comes from. It's just a part of our like, it's just a product of like the primitive side of our brains that wants to compete, to take resources from enemy tribes and to dominate. All of that probably comes all the way back. It goes all the way back to like these like old caveman instincts. These caveman instincts are so wild to think about, but they're governing us still today. These caveman instincts, you know what I mean, from our very ancient ancestors, they're still here today. It's not like they've been chucked out as we've been like developing over the course of thousands of years. They were like being passed down as well. And these desires to compete, to take resources, to win wars, and to engage in conflict as well, all of that, it's probably just rooted in like our caveman biology, you know what I mean? Again, the desires to fuck very attractive women, all of that stuff, again, it probably is all like linked to like these like caveman instincts that are still with us. Like being a caveman in modernity, guys, do you really think that our biology, we've changed so like astronomically, dramatically over the course of our history? Probably not really, you know what I mean? We probably still have a lot of like the same things going on in our heads, in our bodies, as our ancestors had in theirs. Not a lot has changed, and that's why I think stuff like war, conflict, competition over resources, all of that is still with us. It's because it's all coming out of those old instincts, the ancient like archaic like parts of our brain that want to all the way back to the reptilian part of our brain that wants to like survive and reproduce and take resources from enemy tribes and to compete and to win and dominate. It all goes back to that. That's where all of these like issues like with war and conflict come from. I think it all just goes all the way back to our like archaic ancestors, and they're like these like survival instincts and mechanisms they developed, and they're still with us today. And that is really the true cause of like conflict, war, whatever you want to call it. That is where it all comes from. It comes again from these like very like ancient instincts that our ancestors had, and they're still with us today. Again, these instincts, it's not like as we over the course of like 1,000 years these instincts were being chucked out. No, they were being passed down. Still today we still have these instincts. I think that's where a lot of like these like issues with conflict and war come from. It comes out of these like very ancient caveman instincts that are still with us today. And really, being a caveman in modernity is so interesting. Again, over the course of 1,000 years now, or a couple thousand, something like that years, again, our how would I say it? Like our civilization has changed so like astronomically. We have all of, like, especially regarding like our technology, like our infrastructure. You know what I mean? All of that has came such a long way now, but we still have like caveman bodies and instincts, you know what I mean? We still have the same bodies of our Stone Age ancestors, but our technology has come so far ahead now. Even though we still have like these ancient archaic caveman bodies and instincts, we still have the same like primitive bodies, but we have all this advanced technology and infrastructure now. It's so funny. Some people would say we have kind of changed in slight ways regarding like our biology. Maybe our IQ got a little bit higher due to like the necessity of like being in a civilization. You needed to be smart to do all these complex things, so maybe perhaps certain aspects of our biology have been changed, but not in a dramatic way, you know what I mean? It's not like we grew like extra appendages, extra like parts in our brain over the course of 1,000 years. No, guys, it's all the same as it was back then. We still have the same bodies as our Stone Age ancestors, but we have all this advanced infrastructure now, and the technology and the civilization stuff is surrounding us. It's all so advanced, but our bodies, we still have the same bodies of our prehistoric ancestors, and that's so weird to think about. We're pretty much like being a caveman in modernity, being a caveman, a hunter-gatherer in modernity. The same instincts, the same brain stuff, everything's the same as it was in the Stone Age till today. But we now have all this like advanced stuff around us, the technology, the cars, the infrastructure, the computers, the nuclear missiles, Again, war, conflict is still with us today. And honestly, I think it's all because of the fact that we still have like these ancient instincts still with us today. And henceforth, that's why we compete with each other still today. We engage in war and conflict to dominate each other. It's all coming back. It goes all the way back to these like caveman instincts to survive in like harsh ecologies, to like dominate, to make sure you take more than your enemy tribe. All of it is so fascinating once you think about this. That these like, it all goes back to like these caveman like instincts. These caveman instincts, they're still with us today. I swear down. These like ancient instincts that our ancestors had and needed to survive in like their like harsh ecologies. We still have those instincts, primal desires. All of that is still the same as it was back then when our ancestors were roaming around like the deserts of Africa or something like that, or they were in Siberia or some shit, and they were like trying to like survive and shit. It's so like weird, man. It hasn't changed at all. Couple in the Stone Age till today, it's all the same shit, man. Not a lot has changed at all. It's so weird to think about this, man. That we still have like these primitive like parts in our brain. The biology is still the same as it was in the Stone Age. Not a lot has changed too dramatically again over the course of like thousands of years. It's not like we developed extra appendages or limbs or whatever you want to call it. It's all the same as it was. And that's why it's so hilarious to me that we have all of this advanced technology, infrastructure, etc., computers, nuclear missiles, but we also still have like nuclear, like, yeah, we have nuclear missiles, but we also have like war, conflict, and still like that. It's because, honestly, I think so. It's because we still operate in like these like, very like primitive bodies. That these caveman instincts are still with us, and they determine quite a lot still, and that's so fascinating. Oh damn, fly, man. It's a fly, man. That's so horrible. There's a fly buzzing around me, I swear down. But what was I getting at? Being a caveman in modernity, all that old stuff that our ancestors had and needed to survive in their like harsh environments, all that stuff is still with us today in our brains, and that's where all this like violence comes from, like these like conflicts and that's why we like still have like wars going on and stuff and all that type of stuff. It comes from these like ancient parts of our like biology, and these ancient like aspects to our brains, like the reptilian side of our brain, the part of our brain that wants to like survive and reproduce and etc., and to maintain its own survival in like harsh ecologies. All that shit is still the same as it was in the Stone Age. We haven't really changed all too dramatically, you know what I mean? And that's why, honestly, that's why I think that war and conflict is something like these sorts of issues that we suffer from. It's never going to go away, because it's all tied. It all goes back to these like caveman instincts that are still with us, that have been controlling us all throughout our history, still today. You're probably, most likely, you might disagree. Oh damn. You might disagree, but 100% you probably are being like very much governed by like a lot of like very archaic like instincts and like primal desires that you don't even probably realize it, because we are pretty much slaves to our like primitive, like the primitive parts of our brains and our biology. We are so like heavily like controlled by like these ancient like instincts, these archaic like caveman instincts. They determine quite a lot of our behavior. It's so like funny to think about this, that we like have like these like ancient like instincts, bro. It's still all the same, man. The caveman instincts are still the same. You might disagree, but it's so important to think about this. Our behavior and all that, it all emerges out of these like caveman instincts, you know what I mean? You might not even realize this, but I'll think about how much of like your biology, how much it like determines like what you do in life, like your behaviors, your certain like taste in food and etc., and all that. It all comes from your biology, and your biology is like very much determined by like the caveman side of your brain. These archaic like caveman instincts, they determine quite a lot still today. It's almost like people have forgot about these instincts, the primal like desires to fuck and reproduce and sleep with many women, many attractive women, the primal desires to compete with other men and like engage in conflict, and which oftentimes results in war. These instincts, think about like that World War II, World War One, all of these like conflicts in our past, it all was coming from these caveman. The true like explanation for these conflicts is like these caveman instincts that are with us, and that result in like competitiveness and like the desire to like fight with other men and to dominate them and to take their resources. All goes back to the Stone Age. Goes back to like the Stone Age, when our ancestors needed these instincts to survive in their harsh ecologies. Imagine, that's so wild to think about, yo. That's so wild to think about that. That if you think about it, World War One, II, any type of conflict you can imagine, it all, I think so, it all, I think the true explanation for all of these like world conflicts is simply that it's all like emerges, it all links back to these like caveman instincts that are still with us from our Stone Age ancestors, and that henceforth, that's why you have stuff like the conflict in like Gaza. I don't want to mention any certain, I don't want to mention anything too specifically, but that type of conflict, and there's other sort of related conflicts. It all is because of the fact that these instincts from our ancestors, they're still with us today, and these instincts it's not like they've like disappeared. They've been being chucked out over the course of 1,000 years till today. We have the same instincts that our primitive ancestors had. That shit is so funny to think about, and that is why we still have like wars and conflicts and all this type of stuff. It all links to like these caveman instincts that our ancient ancestors had, and we still have the same instincts, because again, over the course of like 1,000 years, it's not like you're in these like parts of our brain were being chucked out, like we were like losing these instincts. These instincts are so fundamental, and they are so determining. That's why even with all this advanced civilization technology, we still have conflicts and wars, because we still have these ancient like archaic instincts from our ancestors. We still have the same instincts as they had till today. A lot hasn't changed at all. I swear down, it's so funny that we have nuclear missiles, computers, PlayStations, Xboxes, but we still have like a caveman brain. Isn't that funny? Even though we have doctors, physicians, scientists, etc., but they all still have like caveman brains. They still have these ancient like instincts, these primal like parts of their brain that determine their biology. Again, think about like a scientist, think about the smartest people you know. They're still being controlled by like their caveman instincts. These instincts from our Stone Age ancestors that we required, that we had these instincts that were developing in like these harsh ecologies that our ancestors needed to survive. Those instincts, they're still with us today, I swear down. And any type of, it doesn't matter how smart someone is, they are still controlled by these like instincts, these caveman instincts. These instincts to like to survive and reproduce, and to like, yeah, stuff like that. They're still here with us today. It doesn't matter how smart someone is, how genius someone is, how brilliant someone is, they still have these ancient archaic instincts in their heads. And that's why conflict and war is still with us today, yo. It's all because of these ancient archaic instincts that haven't really disappeared at all, that are still with us. These ancient, like very primitive instincts haven't like just been chucked out of our brains over the course of 1,000 years. We are still governed by caveman brains, by caveman instincts. Even the smartest people you know, they still operate off of instinct in some regards. If you analyze their behavior, they still, in certain aspects, they still operate off caveman instinct, the caveman Stone Age instincts that our ancestors had and needed to survive in their harsh ecologies. They're still with us today, generations later, thousands of years later, centuries later. We are still governed by these primitive instincts. They haven't disappeared, which is so fascinating, weird and wild to think about. Even like we've come so far as a species, you know what I mean? All of this like advanced technology, infrastructure, etc., all whatever you want to call it, computers, nuclear missiles, PS4, Xbox, etc., whatever. Even with that being said, we still have like the caveman parts of our brain, the caveman instincts these like primitive, like primal desires to like sleep with lots of attractive women, to take resources from enemy tribes, to conquer and dominate other men, and to take what they have and to improve the odds of us surviving in like harsh environments and ecologies. Those instincts haven't just been chucked out after like over the course of like 1,000 years. They haven't been chucked out. They're still with us. That's why war, conflict, all that isn't gonna, that's not gonna like go away anytime soon. War and conflict is still gonna be with us still today. As it's not gonna disappear, we still operate off of these primitive like instincts and desires that still govern so much of our behavior. It's quite insane once you start to think about this carefully. Again, think about it. How much of your behavior is like controlled by your primitive instincts and desires? You would say maybe not that much, but I would say maybe perhaps all of it is. All of your actions and behavior, it all emerges from like these like caveman parts of your brain. The neocortex only came in like maybe a couple thousand million years ago. The older parts of our brain, they're much more like, I guess what would be the right word, terminology, they're more like determining now, still are more determining than the neocortex, because our ancestors were like operating off of like the primitive parts of our brain more. The neocortex only came in like a few thousand million years ago. The older part of our brain, which is like the reptilian side, that has been with us since day one, and that's the part, that's where all of our psychology comes from. All of it's deeply rooted in like that reptilian part of our brain. The other sides to our brain as well that are like still so primitive from our ancient archaic ancestors. These caveman instincts, man. Being a caveman in modernity, we still have hunter-gatherer bodies, the bodies of our archaic ancestors that were like foraging in like some parts of Africa or Siberia, and they were trying to like stay alive, and they were like taking what they can and like whatever. All that, we still have the same bodies as those types of like ancient like people in the past. The body, our physiology hasn't changed that much over the course of 1,000 years, a couple of centuries, give or take, whatever you want to call it. We still have the same brain, we still have the same instincts, archaic desires, whatever you want to call it, man. That's why we still have war and conflict, etc. It all links back to these caveman instincts are still with us today, that still govern quite a lot of our behavior and our I guess our desires and all that. It was still so like intimately linked to like these caveman survival mechanisms. Oh, it's so wild to think about that. We have all this advanced technology, civilization, society, cars, but we still have caveman brains and instincts and desires. Nuclear missiles, but we have caveman brains. So think about how funny that is. That if there will ever be like a conflict, a proper one, like imagine like a nuclear war, fallout, that everything will become destroyed. But people would wonder why is it that we start killing each other for no reason with nuclear missiles? The true explanation here is that it's because we still have caveman instincts. It's like these parts of our brain that our ancestors needed to survive in like the harsh environments of like Africa or Siberia. These primitive parts of our brain, they're still here today with us now. They haven't disappeared. It's so funny. Being a caveman in modernity, we are not so far removed from those like primitive like cave people that you see in museums, you know what I mean? We still have a lot of their instincts still with us today. We haven't like, it's not like we grew a new part or a new section to our nervous system, you know what I mean? We are still so heavily like controlled by like these ancient, like almost like primitive like primal instincts and desires. They're still here with us today. They're still here with us today. They haven't disappeared. It's not like they've been trucked out. That's why it's so funny. And that's why I think that, you know, issues with like war and all that conflict, that's always going to be with us. You know why? Because we have like these caveman instincts, these caveman brains. So obviously war and conflict, that's not going to like disappear. It will always be with us still today. So yeah, being a caveman in modernity is so wild to think about this, that so much of our behavior is like, it all originates from like these primitive like caveman instincts and desires to compete, to take resources from enemy tribes, to win wars and conflicts, all emerges from these caveman instincts. That's so funny, actually. Think about World War One, World War Two, World War One and World War Two. Some people would say, well, that was because people were like they were arguing over politics or something, or ideologies. Actually, guys, World War One and World War Two, the true explanation here is that it's because people with their caveman brains in that time period, they were they were like operating off these types of like primitive instincts, desires to compete, to win wars, conflict, take resources from enemy tribes. The true explanation for World War One and World War Two is the caveman brain. That is, the caveman brain caused the conflict in that time period, and it's still causing issues still today. We still like all these issues around the world regarding like conflict, war and genocide, etc., whatever you want to call it. It's our caveman brains that are kind of messing us up. They're still like, they're causing us to like trip over ourselves, even with all this advanced technology and society and civilization. These like caveman instincts, these primitive primal desires and whatever you want to call it, that's still like pushing us in certain directions that aren't very good for us, you know what I mean? It's not going to change, because it's again, it's not like you can just check out these primitive parts of your brain. The primitive parts of your brain, they're still with you still today. You can't like remove them, man. That's why war, conflict, all of that's still going to be with us. It's never going to change. It's quite a tragedy that war is probably never going to come to an end. God damn. Being a caveman in modernity is so funny if you think about it like that. If you think about it like this. Again, our bodies are not so different from our ancient ancestors. The brain, the nervous system, the chemistry in our heads, whatever you want to call it, we still operate off of like primitive caveman instincts. Henceforth, war, conflict, etc. and stuff like that. Genocide, murder, all of these like horrible things. It's the reason these things still exist with us today is because we still have caveman brains and bodies. Yeah, it's so funny. We're always, it's so funny. If you can see all of like our recent history, we're trying to fight against the caveman brain, you know what I mean, inside of us. That's what modernity is. That's what our modern civilization is all about. It's all about trying to like heavily like restrict these caveman instincts and get rid of them inevitably. Even like perhaps it goes back to like religion as well. Like a lot of religion is about like delaying gratification, trying to like to control these instincts, these primitive like instincts about like war and genocide and killing ourselves, and try survive and reproduce and take what your enemy is holding and kill him and take his resources and expand your own territory. We're trying to like battle against this part of our brain, the caveman brain. It's so funny to think about it. Yeah, right now we're like very much struggling against like the caveman instincts that we still have with us today, the caveman brain. We're trying to struggle against it, because it will like eventually push us to our own demise, I think so, especially regarding like nuclear war, whatever you want to call it. We are right now like struggling against the caveman brain. We're trying to like push against these primitive instincts to try and like search for like better solutions to like conflict and war. But these caveman instincts, these desires to compete, take resources from enemy tribes, etc., all of these desires, these instincts, they're still governing our behavior, and they're probably going to push us to our own demise. And we probably might even become extinct as a species if these caveman instincts aren't kept in check, you know what I mean? If we don't like carefully like push against like this primitiveness and embrace like, you know, civility, you know what I mean, to becoming more like enlightened, advanced intellectually. These like instincts, bro, they're still with us today. It's so messed up. Like war, conflict, genocide, all of that, it comes from that the caveman brain, you know what I mean? That's what's been pushing us to our own demise. It's so scary once you think about it, that we've been, throughout our history now, especially recent history, a couple thousand years, we've been like trying to like fight against our caveman brains and to become more enlightened, to become a better species. But the caveman brain is still there. The caveman side to our brain is still there, you know what I mean? The caveman side to our brain, these like primitive instincts and desires to compete, survive, reproduce, conquer new territory and expand your own enterprise. These instincts, they're so determining still today, and we've really been trying to struggle so hard against them for our own good and stuff, and it's very, very difficult because these instincts are so, like, they can be so invasive, pervasive, like quite like controlling sometimes. It's so scary, man. But if we don't continue this battle against our caveman brains, we will probably meet our own demise, especially regarding like nuclear war, etc. and stuff like that. Again, the caveman brain, that's where all of our issues are coming from, you know what I mean? Being a caveman in modernity, think about this so carefully.